Hi, welcome to the Established Self-Love Summit. I'm your host, Tricia Reid. My guest today is Joni Labbe. How are you?
Oh, doing great.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
that came out wrong. I'm starting again. Sorry. That came out totally wrong. You would think after like 24 of these, I would have it down, but inevitably, I don't.
You're adorable. It's great. You know? I don't know. I thought it was fine.
Then I'll just, I don't know, whatever. We'll do one more. My son who's editing these will just be like, Mom, come on.
Nice. Does he do that for other people or just because you're his mom?
Oh, well, I've hired him to do it. He's good at it. So just,
Wow.
I needed to pay someone to do it. May as well pay my son, right?
Yeah, I love his contact information. I'd love to pay him. I do a lot of videos and
Well, it's neat because he's editing his friends' mountain biking videos and he's just really excited. He goes, Mom, I think I could do this. Like, I really think I could do
yeah,
this.
can
So,
make a career out of it.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of
I
fun.
yeah. Will you text me that later or
Yeah,
email
for
me?
sure, for sure. All right, so let me start this all over again.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Hello, welcome to the Established Self-Love Summit. My name is Tricia Reid, and I'm your host. And today with us, we have Joni Labbe. How are you, Joni?
Doing great. Thank you, Tricia.
Thanks for being here. Well, go ahead and introduce yourself and let our audience know what it is that you do.
Well, I guide women through the maze of nutrition as it applies to hypothyroid and Hashimoto's. And so I am a board certified clinical nutritionist, doctor of chiropractic. I've written an Amazon #1 bestseller called Thyroid and Menopause Madness, and I'm the founder of uh, uh, ThyroSisters, which is a program that enables us to get to the root cause of why you might be having low thyroid issues. So it's my joy, and it's so rewarding to be able to really guide women through this program because we're not getting the answers that we want from the regular medical model. So
Yeah. Okay. So, what led you into this?
well, actually, necessity. I had been on Synthroid for about 20 years, and which is a synthetic form of thyroid. And I ran labs on myself back in 2007, back with the fax machines. And I remember it like yesterday. I was on my way out. It was Friday afternoon, evening, and there in the tray of the fax machine were the results of my lab tests, which said that I had Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune against thyroid. It's after the name of the doctor in 1942 that discovered it, Dr. Hashimoto's. So uh, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune, and so it does not respond to just plain vanilla thyroid medication. So I that's what started me on this path, and why I leaned into all of this information about thyroid. And I saw results. I finally was able to lose 10 pounds that I couldn't for 10 years, and the brain fog and sleepless nights and things of that nature. So,
Wow. How would somebody know if they're being affected by having thyroid issues, let alone jumping straight into Hashimoto's?
well, great question. They actually, it seems like it's a big mystery, but it's not. It's insidious. I call it the invisible disease because in the regular medical model, they're not they're testing for one or two markers, TSH, T4, but it's a simple blood test. We have a panel through our organization that identifies the root causes. There's 22 of them, but like leaky gut. And one might think that they have Hashimoto's if they've been on Synthroid, because the NIH came out last year and said that 53 million people that are on thyroid medication don't even know it's due to Hashimoto's. And some of the symptoms of Hashimoto's is that they're, um, oh, actually, I like an acronym. It's called the word finished, FINISHED. And
Okay.
finish, F stands for foggy brain, little things, no matter how young or old you are. It's like, where did I park the car? Why did I walk in the room? Um, Insomnia, can't get to sleep, can't stay asleep. Or you're sleeping too much and just can't feel rested and energetic. The N stands for no libido. It's just like I'm just nothing. I have no desire, and even and not just sexually, but with um, things you used to enjoy, like shopping or
Yeah. Yeah.
going to the movies. Or it's just like I feel neutral about everything. Um, Inability to lose weight, and that's a biggie. It's you can be on the best diet in the world, and if you have inflammation going on in your system, whether that be in your vascular system, your digestive tract, it's not going to work. And so, yeah.
So with Hashimoto's, is inflammation showing up everywhere, or is it focused on certain organs or body parts?
Uh, well, Hashimoto's normally, typically it goes after the thyroid at the base of your neck. But through this lab testing, we can find out if it's attacking your adrenal glands, your digestive tract, your liver, fatty liver. And it's like, why? I'm eating everything right. I'm taking my thyroid medication and I feel like crap, and it's not, and I'm going to the doctors and they're saying everything's fine. So sometimes you can be totally inflamed and you don't feel feverish, you feel tired, but there's no overt symptom other than these things like that insomnia, or can't lose weight on a low calorie diet, or hair loss, women losing hair on top of their head, and um, exhaustion. By exhaustion, I mean, fatigue. It's like, what? It's only 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and why am I dragging? And even if you slept well the night before, and everything, dry skin, dry
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
Sahara desert down there, and
Yeah.
it's just dry hair, dry skin, dry. And
This
so,
sounds like a really tough place to be. It sounds like a whole lot of not loving on self. Like if I was going through that, I would probably hate myself. Like that's hard. What do you do with that? How do you guide people through this?
well, that's a good point, because it's not just about supplements and diet. It's what's going on between our ears.
Yes.
And I believe we need self-love even more when we don't feel well. And self-love is not, I talk to a lot of mostly women, because Hashimoto's attacks women more than men, but
Okay.
um, it's like, oh, it feels narcissistic, or uh, and self-love is not laziness, overindulgence, me, self-seeking. Uh, it's more of a sense of confidence. Oh, this is challenging, but I'm going to get through it. We're in a time right now where the world is really hurting, and uh, we need, as individuals, especially as women, we're usually the hub of the house and
Yes.
businesses and the community. And so if we go down, that has an impact on our loved ones. And so self-loving is actually a humbleness of oneself, that not an overrated opinion of yourself, not narcissism, a legitimacy, a sense of identity. And it's physical discipline, not overindulgence. And I just want, it's important that we, especially right now, have courage. Courage comes, that's a result of self love, that you have self worth, even to yourself, not just the family. Because if the family, or friends, people can turn on you or not make you feel worthy. And so to be able to stand tall and go, look, it's worth it to me to feel good. and it's going to be worth it to everybody else, even if you don't know it yet.
Yeah.
That I take this time for myself and get to the root cause of the problem. And it's not a lot of time. Usually we have these things resolved within 4 to 6 months when they've been going on for years.
Now explain that to me, how quickly they can be resolved based on what type of protocol. What are you introducing your clients to?
Um, the protocols, what you and I are talking about is functional medicine. And as opposed to the regular medical model. In the regular medical model, first of all, they don't test enough for us to get to the root cause of the problem. Second of all, they're looking for a prescription that would fit, that might help with those symptoms. In this case, thyroid, they would give you thyroid medication. But Hashimoto's is an autoimmune. And oddly enough, this goes to self-loving. Autoimmune simply means that your body's confused as to what's a toxin and what is a gland or organ. So the body starts attacking it. And Tricia, in the literature, I hate this term because I have Hashimoto's, but it calls it self-loathing. So this applies to, and we don't use that term very often in modern
It's kind of a yucky reference. It's sad. It's sad.
Yes, and it is sad. And self-loathing means, well, I don't care enough about myself. I don't love myself enough to even, my cells are even dividing incorrectly.
What is that coming from, though? Does it have to do with stress or internal ingredients is what I call it, because that's stress body chemistry, or the external stress, or is it all of it?
Well, you hit a good point. The literature tells us some main things. Stress is one of them, internal or external. External, when we're having external stress, to be, like the kids are misbehaving, or, there's a death in the family, or something you can't control. External stress, the ability to feel healthy enough to go, this is a challenge, but I am going to overcome this by the grace of God, through dignity and ease, we'll get through this. Yeah. But so an internal stress can come from the biochemistry of the body, how we're thinking about ourselves. If we're self-loathing, our cells are going to change. And as you asked, why? Well, the studies, the clinical studies say there are about 6 main reasons. One is inflammation, operative word. Inflaming of the vascular system. This crosses the blood-brain barrier. Have you ever had days where it's like, what is wrong with me? Normally that wouldn't trigger me. I'm ticked off and I'm angry. There's no reason for me to be that way. We have a saying in functional medicine, that's inflammation of the brain.
Yes.
And it's between the gut and the brain through the vagal nerve, which goes to this point, mind-body connection. Right. Physically, there really is a mind-body connection through that nerve. Right. And so inflammation, that leaky gut concept, it's literally where your gut, the tight junctures open up and fats, proteins, carbohydrates enter the bloodstream. Your body, in an effort to serve you, goes, whoa, what's this? Starts inflaming against it, even though you've been eating correctly. And that inflammation, it looks like weight gain. It looks like, why did I put on 20 pounds in a year? Yeah. In reality, we get the inflammation down and the weight comes down. An undiagnosed autoimmune causes this inflammation and this, this condition. Yeah. And genetics can be a part of it. Sometimes mom or grandma, they did not test for Hashimoto's. Even now, it's seldom done in the regular medical model, or if it is, they just give you thyroid medication, which doesn't touch it. So those are the main reasons.
Got it.
Wow.
Well, what does self-love look like to you? To Joni, outside of the clinical practice, outside of clients?
That looks like to me where there's a sense of peace in how you live and move inside yourself. That during challenging times, you're not critical of yourself. You're not beating yourself up. stop blaming yourself. Uh, Many things, there's no purpose to that. It's so interesting. Do you know that now they have scanning equipment now, that if you have a negative thought about yourself, they can tell if that is taking up physical space in your brain, the thought. So I shoulda, woulda, coulda,
Yeah.
um, carries an inflammatory marker called a cytokine, and it literally takes up space in your brain. So,
Wow.
you know,
I
to,
never thought of it that way. I never thought of that way. I mean, I'd thought of, I had heard about cytokines. I had heard about the poisons. I, and I knew negative thoughts had an effect, obviously, but I never thought of it as releasing a cytokine. Okay. Sorry. I'm taking it all in.
yeah, and a cytokine that's literally physically, they can see on a scan that your brain is not as effective or productive as it would be. The neurotransmitters are not synapsing as readily because of negative thoughts. So that old adage, um, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Yeah.
It's true scientifically. The negative thoughts that we have are really impacting our health, and not just our environment, which is huge.
Right.
So
Right. So, what are your thoughts on everything that's been happening in reference to what's happening to the human body? What I see for me being on quarantine, so to speak, from my regular job, um, it occurred to me that the worst type of biological warfare that I could have ever imagined, like when 9/11 happened and everyone was afraid, what if biological warfare was happening and what would that look like? And when I consider the stress that the human body has been through mentally,
mhm.
that right there in my mind was and is the worst type of biological warfare, to instill fear in other people. So what are you seeing with your clients right now, and how is that? Are there more cases showing up, or are people getting more inflamed because of these thought processes of negativity and self-doubt and chaos?
Yes. Oh, you bring up such a good point, Tricia. We were not made to walk around in fear. And that's why we have to watch what we're allowing into our brains. Uh, because, and we really have to sift through, is this just a marketing of fear that is being presented to me, even on the news? Um, and and have the discernment and the wisdom to say, I can't buy into this, because it does cause inflammation. It does decrease your white blood count or makes it go through the roof. Either way is rough, and it sucks the life out of your adrenal glands, which is the uh, that's where you get energy from. That's how you metabolize food. That helps us with the sleep wake cycle. So you're in fear and you try and sleep and you're thinking about these world events, and we're all people, and we're all just human beings that we need to be stronger than ever, and more solid in our convictions about how we treat others. And I think most of us, I really believe most of us, no matter what the color of our skin is, respect and appreciate each other. And anything, the news, these world events, to have tools to overcome them, like practice your faith, exercise, be around people that love you and you love them. Pick up the phone and connect with somebody you haven't connected with lately. These are all ways that you can dampen down this revved up, hyper vigilant way that we're becoming, which causes us to be rude and insensitive and not very self-loving or outside loving. The more we love ourselves, the more we can give. Anne Frank's had a quote that said, "No one, no one was poor from giving. The more you give, you know, the more you give, the more you receive. But there's no one went hungry. No one lost anything by giving." And you give more when you feel good about yourself, mentally, physically, spiritually.
And then you feel good on top of it. It just stacks up. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah. Yes, and then you don't get lost in the minutia of those that don't feel good, and they're lost and don't feel well over nonsense. We don't want to get lost in things that don't clutter your mind with
Right.
these things.
Right.
Overthink them.
Right.
So,
So, so talk to me about the symptoms someone would look for with Hashimoto's, and how would they know the difference between it just being a thyroid issue and spiraling into Hashimoto's?
um, they wouldn't really know. That's why I call it the invisible disease.
Oh, okay.
Because it looks, maybe you'd be told that, oh, you're depressed, or that, oh, you're just going through a change in life, what, at 32,
Yeah.
it's, uh, it's, um, that's why it's insidious. And Hashimoto's is the reason quite often for low thyroid. So the symptoms are the same. Feeling sluggish mentally and physically, can't lose weight on a low calorie diet, feeling can't sleep, ticked off for no reason, kind of mood swings up and down, even depression.
What about things
Anxiety.
externally that they might see? I mean, the weight gain, I hear that, but is there other things?
Uh,
I asked that because I had a girlfriend and the inside of her lips turned kind of bluish, like and that was something her doctor said, well, that's a clear sign of it. But I have another client who has it as well, and she didn't have that. So, is there any external?
the classics are hair falling out, even especially on the lateral part of the eyebrows, hair on the head, um, uh, just usually it's loss of hair. I get pictures of the hair in the drain, and as you mentioned, the weight, and externally, it's just like that's a huge motivator. That's
Yeah.
painful when you have things to do, and you just can't get them done,
Yeah.
and so.
Yeah.
Um,
So if you mention on your site the percentage of Americans who don't even know, 60% of Americans or people don't even know that they have a thyroid issue. Why is that?
exactly. Um,
Are we just used to feeling crummy? Is that what it is?
no, it's that it's not being tested
Mm.
in the excuse me, that's a fax
That's
machine
okay.
up the hall, and it goes off like once a month, so I don't know.
Here we are. It's that. It's fine.
Um, no, the biggest reason is that it's not being tested for. Why? Because in the regular medical model, which I have the utmost respect for, I have a dear friend that's in that, but they're great for broken arms and heart attacks, but they're not uh, what you and I are talking about, these chronic things. So how we find out diagnostically is we run something called a TPO antibody and a TGB antibody. You would think this would be some big mystery, but it's not. So that's run. If that comes up with the antibodies, we don't want them over 30. Usually they're over 30, but in the regular thing of life, one is handed some sort of synthetic thyroid medication. Well, in reality, over time, that's even worse because your body here again goes, whoa, that looks like a toxin. I'm going to inflame against it. And over time, the thyroid even becomes more slower and hypo because the body over years, and you didn't do anything wrong. It's just you're taking your synthetic thyroid medication. Natural medication such as Armor, Nature Thyroid, that works better. But here again, that's just a percent of what could be changing all of this. It could be the adrenals. There's a neurological input to that. It could be your digestive tract. Why is my digestive tract? I always feel bloated and 6 months pregnant. It's the gut. And so we seam up the gut, literally these tight junctures, identify if there's any low grade infections in the digestive tract. That also contributes to the thyroid. And it also contributes to this feeling like, I don't feel like doing this. I don't even care enough to do it, so this is my new norm. I'm going to be heavy and, not, and that's not who you were born to be. We all have gifts and talents, and we have to feel good to have them. And it's just, we've got to get over that hump that I'm just not worth it, or there's always some stressor that I'll put it off until tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes.
Yeah. Something that I see in my loved ones is they take care of family first, and they're taking care of business, and they're always on the back burner. And for those clients that I have who aren't addressing their own needs, they are so loving and generous and giving of themselves to everyone else around them. And when you get to the end of the day, how do you know if you're just tired from working hard or if you need to address an issue like
That's right.
this?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I know.
So what do you suggest people do to make sure doctors are treating Hashimoto's effectively, or how can the audience reach out to you? What does that look like? How do you work with your clients?
Yes. Well, one can reach out through my website, ThyroSisters.com.
Which is such a cute name. I love it.
Oh, thank you. And we have several programs that include lab work. And so no matter where you live in the country, I'm able to send you to your hometown LabCorp. LabCorp is the largest lab in the country. I have a national contract with them. They give us huge discounts on lab work. And so in the program, we have lab work. They include consultations with me. I for years have been teleconferencing all over the country. And so this is not a new way of doing life. But I create a program and a comprehensive lab work. And the day that I go over it with you, I like you to sit back and relax. We roll up our sleeves, and I'll go over what's up, what's down. Most importantly, what can we do about it? Not just my opinion, but science-based, referenced ways that we can tackle this from a functional medicine point of view. And so that's the crux of it. We can't really move forward until we get the lay of the land. And I have saliva, urine, fecal test kits that can be sent to the privacy of your own home. And we can get a plethora of information about your adrenal glands, and in addition to that. So it starts with what I call a clarity call. And it's a call that's complimentary, and I go over your history and see if there's even a fit. If I can help you, if we can, get to the root cause of your situation. So that's how I like to work. Is let's first find out what's going on with you. What are your hopes and dreams and goals, and even your opinion of yourself.
I like how you say that. I like how you see that, because the hopes and dreams, perhaps there were hopes and dreams there previously, and once their symptoms heightened and their depression set in, maybe those hopes and dreams are now on the back burner, or maybe inside their inner critics just saying it's not even worth it. Like
Exactly.
that spiral down really sounds awful.
Exactly. And you're totally right. And so we talk a lot about mindfulness and how do you perceive your environment?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about diet and supplements. It's about, what do you think of yourself? And how could we change that if that's deficient in some way? To make you empowered to do that.
Yeah.
I'm just the coach. I'm not you're the quarterback. And so I want to empower you to be able to talk to any healthcare professional, or not talk to any healthcare professional, even at things that you and I talk about. Does it resonate? And so that you can be the best you possible. Oftentimes I'll talk to clients and they'll say, well, I'm 46. Well, that's the new 36, but they feel 56. And it's, and nothing wrong with 56. I talk to 56-year-olds, there's, nothing. But, the idea is to feel your age or younger, not on a self-centered way, but so you, like you so beautifully put, so you can feel, you can give, you can give more, and then you have more of an enriching life.
Yeah. That
So,
makes sense to me. That totally makes sense to me. So what are the first steps a woman or man can take if they suspect, that they have Hashimoto's? Or to even just address these thought processes. I mean, the way you refer to the football player and the coach, what comes to mind for me is I want to spin that inner critic and say, inner critic, thank you for your wisdom. Now become my biggest cheerleader. Like, I want to learn how to communicate better with that inner critic. So the things that you're saying, that we can look at science, we can look at medicine, we can look at functional medicine, and we can see where it all needs to come together. I like to look at human development and what's going on in my normal reactions. And if my gut's off, if my inflammation is an issue, I can feel inflammation happen in my brain. So how do you help people through that process of saying, oh my gosh, that inner critic, we can make it our biggest cheerleader if we just guide it and reduce that inflammation? So what does that show up like in your practice?
well, the first thing is what you just said. Uh, there was an interesting clinical trial done, and I don't know why it was done on 1,000 women. I don't know why it was just women, but they gave each participant $100, and there's no judgment. You could either give that $100 to a charity of your choice, or you could keep it. And they ran lab work on them, and all these participants had inflammation markers and things of that nature, high white blood counts. So they gave them the participants the $100. You make a decision, and the women did, and then they reran the blood work. On the women that chose to keep the $100, the markers all stayed the same. They didn't get worse, but they didn't get better. On the women that gave the $100 to a charity, their inflammatory markers went down, the white blood count became stable. It has a huge impact on, so the first thing when we embark upon a little season in our lives, I like to just, I call it steps. The first step is stop blaming yourself. And let's just get to the point where we feel so good. We're just overflowing with wanting to give and abundance. And so stop blaming yourself, stop beating yourself up. That's the first step. Then I like to test and not guess. And we discover what would be the best tests and for whatever concerns are affecting you. I like to incorporate, I call it eating. And, most of the time when we want to diet or we want to make changes physically, what I like to look for is, and what we do is, how can you eat and make that sustainable? So as much farm to table as possible, no processed food, hormone-free meats, and being gluten-free if it turns out you have an autoimmune of any sort. Because there's a whole concept called molecular mimicry, where the doggone gluten, wheat, rye, oats, barley, is mimicking your hormones.
Ooh, I haven't heard this one yet. Tell me.
Yes, it's like, oh, gluten-free, not gluten-free, but it's really important because the new studies tell us that your receptor sites are saying, well, why should I make T3 or progesterone or cortisol for Tricia? She's got plenty of it. Because the receptor sites see gluten and it's mimicking your hormones. So regardless if you were not born with celiacs or you don't have autoimmune, going off gluten is a key part of of our pillars. It's a it's a part of it, of the
Yeah.
pest.
Yeah.
And Tricia, I'm the thinnest client. When she has gone off gluten, the weight comes down because the inflammation has come down, and the body starts making hormones again, not just thyroid hormones, but sex hormones, cortisol. Um, and because the body's not mimicking these things, it's a false state that the brain thinks that, and their neurological system.
So can I ask, is that only in grains that have pesticide and there's that weird reaction that's happening where it's like mutating the grains because of the pesticides, or is it in all of the grains no matter what? Or, I mean,
Yeah, all of the grains in the US. Why? Because they're genetically modified.
got it.
But if they're pesticide free, great, they're organic. But we have to go a step further and go, no, I by being genetically modified, the wheat, that waffle or pizza or bread, it smells, looks, tastes like it always did back in the day. But the seed that went into the ground is genetically modified. It's a chemical. So when we ingest it, the body goes, this is a chemical, and it starts inflaming against everything. So, and that's why the weight gain, the fatigue, puffy eyes,
Yeah.
hair falling out. So we don't want to be having our hormones mimicked by gluten.
Right.
And I got on that because of of, I mean, we go into depth on different diets depending on what's important to you. And we fold that into your lifestyle to make it worthwhile. And so you're not coming from deprivation, because that's not sustainable.
Right.
It's a myth to think if I go to the gym and I live on lettuce, I'll lose weight. It's just not, as long as there's inflammation. And gluten's a big contributory factor to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time I eat gluten, I try to prove it wrong and it's just not wrong. My body doesn't like it. Even though I've had tests to prove I could eat it technically, but
Yes,
my body doesn't like it. So
I know.
yeah, I get to pay the consequences when I choose that.
I do too. Sometimes it's good to fall off the wagon. It reminds you, whoa.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that's coming up for me right now is, as we're talking about this, the inflammation we feel in our body, what does that feel like? Well, for me, it feels like achiness. I feel it not only in my joints when I eat something that causes that inflammation, but also I can feel it happening in my brain. I can
Mhm.
feel it happening in my personality shifting, like I'm more of a reaction. And so when I think of my friends who have been diagnosed with Hashimoto's or with having thyroid issues, I mean, my heart just aches, because when I have inflammation in my body from something I chose to eat, or like my son likes to say, Mom, I hurt. I say, well, you did a really great workout. At least as a 14-year-old boy why you hurt, right? You know
Yes.
where that's coming from. But if we're just living our lives and we don't realize why we're hurting, we don't realize it's from our hormones or from our body chemistry and other issues. Like if I hurt, it's because I ate wrong or because I worked out really hard. And I know those are my two things.
That's
But
right.
for people that just hurt all the time, what do we
Yeah.
do with that? How do we guide people? And right now, under these extreme stressful situations, I'm under the impression that with our stress levels going up, we're going to have more inflammation in the body because we're not digesting our food properly.
Right.
So, how are you guiding people through that process, through these stressful times? I'm sure you have a lot of insight on how to approach
Yeah.
what's happening right now, but
Well, like you said, we test and not guess. So we get to the root cause of that. We I'm not a therapist, but seems to be part of the program. We talk about fears and how to overcome that. And really interesting, I used to think, let's take serotonin. serotonin is a hormone, a feel-good, happy hormone. Many people are on antidepressants that contain serotonin reuptake. Well, come to find out that serotonin, let's just take that one neurotransmitter, which helps us to go to self-love, is produced in the gut
You're
and,
going there. Yes. Okay.
and transferred up to the brain. And so we clear up the gut, and then all of a sudden there is a sense of peace and less fear, um, over, and this sense of capableness and identity and legitimacy in who I am. So, to answer your question, we test, I create a program, we address these, because you're cognitive enough to know, no matter how old or young you are, this isn't me. But wow, I get the gut cleared up, and now I have more energy because you're producing more dopamine. I have more cognitive thinking because you're producing more acetylcholine. Didn't forget where I parked the car, you
Yeah.
know. And so these are uh, neurotransmitters that are produced. Plus, we have formulas, referenced science-based formulas that mimic serotonin and dopamine and acetylcholine and GABA, which helps you sleep. And so we look into that. So we're testing, we're not guessing, and then we're applying these functional medicine protocols to the problem, and correlating the lab test with the concerns that one brings in to the table, like, I'm in constant fear. Well, it could be that those adrenals are on overdrive, so we have ways of eating, that decrease that. We call it hypervigilance. It's always like the other shoe's going to drop.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. What about age groups that are more or less susceptible, or life experiences like hormone shifts? Is there any common things that you're seeing in those areas?
Well, it usually slugs a woman in, typically, as she's going through menopause or premenopause. And women are going through menopause earlier and earlier. So it's like, well, I can't be going through menopause. But through hormones, through meats, through pesticides, as you brought up, sometimes the hormones are shifting permanently earlier. So that's usually when one becomes so aware of it, or it becomes such a pain point that we do something about it. But there's really there's more of a propensity in women versus men, and more often it's in, mid 40s, early 40s. But I have clients that are they're 15 years old, and we discover they have Hashimotos,
Oh
or
no.
in the early 20s. But you bring up a really good point. It's not age related. So
Okay.
don't there's not don't feel like you're too young to have Hashimoto's. It's
Yeah.
not, or too old to discover it, which can bring a whole new dynamic to your life, to find this out.
I'm glad you said that, because what comes to mind, and I kind of referred to it earlier, is the personality shift. When we can look at what the symptoms are and go, oh, I see that in me as well, and know that that's not a permanent part of our personality, that
Yeah,
perhaps by getting these treatments or eating differently, or, getting guidance, that
exactly.
part of the negative part of the personality goes away. It's not a forever part.
You're
I like
right.
that.
Yes, it's not. I have a chapter in my book called "You're Not Lazy, Crazy, or Finished."
There we go.
And you're not, and yes, there is a time where one needs antidepressants or anti-anxiety, but
Sure.
it's and there's no judgment there. That's needed very often.
Right.
I mean, oftentimes, but oftentimes it's like you just said, we change the diet, and it's like, wow, I'm not having a personality change. I'm not lazy, and
Right.
often we're told, um, just eat less and exercise more, and it'll be fine. And that's just a myth.
Yeah.
And even if we eat less and exercise more, we can't, um, we've got to eat the right things.
Right. Yeah. Joni, do you feel like there's anything else life is asking for you to share today?
Um, you know, I would like your viewers to know that they are more capable than they realize and stronger. And oftentimes, if we've had a long season of being in fear or angry or upset or just back of our mind thinking of these world events that we're in, to I'd like to encourage you to look inside and remember that person that you were, that woman that enjoyed doing the thing, enjoyed your family, raising your kids, enjoyed just working out, enjoyed a movie, back to enjoying the simple things in life, appreciating just being outside. And it sounds trite, but how enriching to just see a beautiful sunset and have that touch your soul. And my final words are just know you're capable. Go keep practicing your faith, keep practicing mindfulness, keep practicing whether you feel like it or not. Get tested, get to the root cause of issues, and dig deeper if you're being told you're fine and you don't feel like you're fine.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much for joining us for the Established Self-Love Summit. This has been so wonderful.
oh, Tricia, thanks for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. You give so much, and I appreciate your insight and your communication.
Thank you.
You got it going.
Thank you. And everyone will be able to find more about Joni Labbe. It'll all be in the show notes, and she's ready to share and answer questions and help you out. So please contact her. She's going to support you big time. Thank you, Joni. Have a good day.
Thank you.